and good evening. My name is Federico Ree from Melbourne, Australia, and this is Inspiretalk, another great show tonight lined up, and I'll introduce our special guest in just a moment. But also joining us tonight is my amazing co-host Stuart Harris in sunny Brisbane. How are you, Stuart?
Yeah, g'day Federico. Thanks very much. It's not so sunny tonight because it's pouring with rain outside. You wouldn't believe it, would you? But yeah, no, great to be here and looking forward to our guest tonight.
Absolutely, and look, we do have a bit of a technical glitch at the moment. It seems to be a little bit slow, but hopefully Google will do its work to smooth it out. Now, before we introduce Joe, Stuart, perhaps if you want to give the viewers listening in from all around the world a bit of an understanding of what Inspiretalk is, so that they can sort of understand what we're all about in essence.
Yeah, thanks, Federico. Well, look, we have a lot of fun putting together Inspiretalk and bringing together some world-renowned speakers. We've got one tonight, but we've had quite a few wonderful speakers leading up to this particular time in the year. And all of these speakers bring something special. They bring a story, they bring some hot tips which they can give our audience. And usually our audience can take away and apply things into their lives or their businesses that make a big difference in the end. So really exciting event and really exciting speakers that we have on board.
Thanks, Stuart. Look, it has been a lot of fun, and we've been running these shows formally for about a year, although we did run these shows before then under a different brand. But I must say that the people that we have attracted have been amazing, and certainly tonight we have one of the best. And without saying too much more, and if we don't want to make our guests wait for too long, welcome Joe Cross. How are you, Joe?
G'day, Federico. How you doing?
I'm not too bad, thanks. I'm absolutely fine. Now, I know that you're currently in New York, and you've only kind of just woken up, and I must say I thank you sincerely for making this time available this morning. So it's probably, what, about 6 o'clock in the morning there?
It's 6:03 here, Federico and Stuart, in New York City. It's the sun is just coming up. It's the middle of summer here. It's August, and I don't know if many of the listeners or viewers are aware of this, but August is probably the worst time of the summer to be in New York City, because it's hot and it's humid, and most people get out of the city. But I'm going to take it on this summer. I'm going to stay here for the rest of the month, primarily for two reasons. It's my first time giving it a go, and I like new experiences, but also the Olympics are on, as you guys know, and they start up pretty soon, and New York's only an hour behind Rio, and so that's a pretty good time zone to be able to sit in my living room in the late hours of the night and watch the games.
Look, it sounds like a place to be at the moment, and certainly when you're living in Melbourne in winter, it's not too much fun, as you could probably appreciate, being an Aussie yourself. You also live in Sydney, and you do travel backwards and forwards. Is that right?
Yeah, I try to spend about 2 to 3 months of the year in Australia, generally during the summer, because I'm not stupid. I like to follow the sun, but that doesn't always work out that way. But I'm sort of trying about 2 to 3 months in Australia, about 2 months on the road in Europe, and then the balance of the time in the US, with probably half of that time in New York, depending on travel commitments and touring and talking and filming and whatever we've got on our slate.
Interesting. So, look, speaking of your tours and your filming and et cetera, and your endeavours, I guess just for the audience, I'd like to formally introduce you, Joe, and I've got here a quick profile of yourself, and I'll just read it out for everyone's sake. Joe Cross is the founder, chairman, and CEO of Reboot Holdings Proprietary Limited, a health and lifestyle brand that creates entertaining and actionable educational media for anyone that is sick and tired of being sick and fat. Joe is also the co-director, executive producer, host, and subject of 2 feature films, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, and also Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead #2, and he currently lives in New York and Sydney. Now, I must confess, Joe, I first came across your profile about a year ago when I was sitting in front of the TV. My wife and I said, what do you want to watch tonight? And I said to her, well, why don't we look at something that's healthy and perhaps a documentary? So as we were doing a search, we came across obviously your amazing documentary, and we got quite attracted to your mission, your whole concept of going out to the public and presenting your philosophy to healthy eating. And according to the statistics here, which are quite impressive, one of the things that you accomplished over a 60-day period to begin with was actually losing a lot of weight on yourself, and a total of 45 kilos, if I'm right. Is that correct, Joe?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Okay, so obviously you had a bit of work there to do, and you felt that the best way to do it was to drink smoothies for 2 months. Is that correct?
Not so much smoothies, more on the juice side of life. We can get into the differences between a smoothie and a juice later, Federico, if that's important to the viewers. But look, essentially what happened was I was a pretty typical average Aussie bloke, which meant I loved my food, I loved my beer, I loved going out, loved hanging out with my mates, loved the Barbie. I worked hard. I was someone who used to play footy when I was young, and work came along. I started working in the finance industry at the Sydney Futures Exchange and built my own business, started my own entrepreneurial company at 28 for my first time. And once, when you're playing footy in your teens and your early 20s and all of a sudden work responsibilities and work pressures come along, the sport and the exercise gets pushed out the back. The pizzas and the hamburgers and the fast food takeaway get elevated because there's lack of time to make and prepare your own meals. And all of a sudden, it doesn't take too long before you do that for 10 or 15 years, and my system broke. And the bottom line is that if you ignore those biological laws of cause and effect, you will break. And so it's one of those things where I suffered from nutritional ignorance, is what I like to say, and the system broke down. And what happened was I got an illness, was a chronic autoimmune disease called chronic urticaria angioedema, which is effectively my body was attacking itself. A fancy word for saying, chronic hives, but really serious, deep, uncomfortable and life-threatening hives, because if it got into my throat, my esophagus could swell up and that would be game over. So I had to carry an EpiPen everywhere I went in case I started getting swelling, so you could, give yourself an anaphylactic shock reaction. So this went on for 8 years, and that was from the age of 32 to 40. And so basically most of my 30s I was not a healthy boy. And so then at the age of 40 I kind of woke up and realized that, I was 145 kilos, I was drinking, I was smoking, I was not exercising, I was fat, I was sick, and as I like to say, I was nearly dead, 1 foot in the grave. And I decided, this wasn't in the brochure of life that I had planned out. High blood pressure, high cholesterol, pre-diabetic, all of these problems, and I'm only 40. Like, what's my life going to be like when I'm 50 or 60 if I don't do something about this? So that was kind of like a big sort of, as Oprah would say, aha moment. And just as luck would happen, a buddy of mine said, Joe, if you're going to make some serious changes in your life, perhaps you should put it on film. Now, I'd never made a film before. I'd never been in front of a camera before, but I just sold that business I talked about that I started when I was 28. I actually sold that when I was 40, and I did quite well out of it financially. So I had the resources to allocate to something like this from a film point of view. There was never any business idea associated with it. It was actually more about giving back than it was about creating something or taking something. And there was also a selfishness about wanting to get well myself, of course. And so then this was 2007, and the rest is history. I went on a journey where I just drank fresh fruit and vegetable juice extracted from plants. I did that for 60 days and didn't eat anything else, just 60 days of juice. During that period of time, I lost 82 pounds, which is sort of in the high 30s for kilos. I then did 3 months of eating just fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans, seeds, and whole grains, with, of course, juicing as well. And that's when smoothies came in. And I did that for another 3 months. So after 5 months in total, 60 days of juice and 3 months of eating plants, I was off all medication. By then I was 45 kilos down in total, and I had a movement. I'd started a movement, and I had a film to finish. It took another 2 years to finish the film because I went out and filmed people who saw me were doing what I was doing, and I followed them. And that movie is called Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead. It's been seen by 25 million people. We launched it in 2011. Since then, I appreciate your bio update. I should have given you my most recent one. I've actually done 2 more feature films. They're
Right.
Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead 2, and then The Kids Menu, which I've just released this year on Netflix. And yeah, I mean, I'll take a break now and give you a chance to ask some questions. But that's basically the synopsis of how I got going in the movie business.
Look, it's a great summary of yourself, Joe, and I'm sure that there's so much more that you can offer us during the show tonight. So, look, I can understand why you travelled to America. I guess, in America there is a bit of a wellness issue there, and you probably found that to be your ideal target market. And obviously, you had a vision of going out there and achieving, as you've said, starting a movement, and you certainly have created a movement. And looking at some of the statistics that I've got here in front of me, and I'm sure that these have changed since I looked these up, you've amassed over 130,000 followers on Twitter, over 800,000 likes on Facebook, and as you've stated, several million views on YouTube for your various movies. That is certainly a massive accomplishment. As a visionary, as an entrepreneur, I guess starting out with an idea that you had, and literally you took a gamble, you went out there and you disrupted the industry to some extent. So, look, I would like to focus a lot of the show tonight around the mindset of an entrepreneur, and obviously what led you to do what you did. But before we go into that any further, I probably want to give Stuart an opportunity to maybe ask a particular question that he's formulated. So, Stuart, on to you.
Yeah, look, thanks, Federico. And look, you probably are experiencing a bit of a lag in the video here, so I think that's coming from my end somehow, so apologies for that. But look, Joe, really inspiring to hear what you've just outlined to us. And one of the questions I had here, which may be a bit early in the piece, was what are the key points that you would advise to somebody who is going to follow in your footsteps and put together maybe some key focus films that are about helping other people get things right in their life, or creating the right brochure, as you quite succinctly put it.
So Stuart, just to clarify, because I just had a little bit of a problem hearing you, were you saying that if people wanted to follow in my footsteps in the film business or in the business of influencing?
Well, look, it would probably be both, Joe, because obviously they want to create a message maybe that's for a specific audience, but quite often nowadays you do it through film, right? So yeah, probably a combination of both of those.
Right. So I guess that I guess it's a very good question, because I'm in the business of storytelling. And telling a story is fundamental to humanity. I mean, we've been telling stories ever since we've been around. Whether it's a $300 million blockbuster like Jason Bourne that's just come out this weekend, whether it was 5 men and women sitting around a fire, 3 million years ago. So storytelling is innate in all of us, and I think that humans respond better to stories that are told from a sharing point of view rather than a preaching point of view. I think preaching and telling people what to do is difficult. Some people like that, but majority don't. People prefer to be more shown what to do as opposed to be told what to do. And I think that where I came from in my storytelling, which was a personal story, is that it was very real. There was no intent to start a movement, believe it or not. Like that was probably one of the most important things. It was more about, I have something to share, I have something to do, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to share it, and we'll see what happens. But I think that you know, people have incredible bullshit detectors built into them, and they can tell when something's being done as a sales pitch to them, and there's no reality, there's no underlying truth or soul to it. So, so my advice would be that you have to be real. It has to be true, and you really have to be passionate about it, because that passion will sort of pour through the imagery, whether it's film or whether it's a book or whether it's an Instagram account, a Twitter account, a website, a blog, whatever the form of medium of communication is. And I think that that's probably the fundamental part. I also believe that luck plays a huge role in success, and anyone who tells you that luck isn't involved, I think they don't, you know, I struggle with that. I don't say they're wrong, because I don't think many people are wrong. I just disagree with people more than saying they're wrong, because it's just an opinion. But in my humble opinion, luck plays a huge role. Now, look, my movie, I started filming this in 2007, and if you think about that, I mean, you know, YouTube only started in July of 2005. Netflix was a red envelope delivery system of DVDs and video cassettes before it went streaming. My movie was made, it came out in 2011. Netflix streaming was just getting going in 2011, so they needed content. I was in the right place at the right time, where my content was picked up by Netflix. These days, it's not easy to get on Netflix. These days, if you make a film, it's much more difficult to get onto that platform. So I was lucky. I would also say that you've got to be prepared to take risk. I mean, you've got to really be prepared to put it all on the line and really give it a go from a financial point of view, because that's what I did. I can tell you now. What started as something where I thought, you know, I'll put $1 million into, ended up being 4 or 5 times that by the time I actually got going. And I had no idea it was going to be that kind of an investment. But you've got to have, you know, you've got to take huge risk. I also say you've got to be, you know, passionate, really passionate about what it is you're doing. And then the third thing I'd say would be you've got to, you know, make sacrifices. You've got to really apply yourself. You can't leave anything. You've got to leave everything out there on the field. Is probably another way of saying it. So these are the things that I would share. You know, risk, passion, sacrifice, understanding luck, how important it is, and honesty and being true.
So, Joe, I just wanted to just quickly explore the that moment in time where it became, you know, the break point from what it was originally. Your luck's kicked in, the passion's been driving it, but all of a sudden you now have a following and there's a business flourishing. Because a lot of people never reach that point, and they don't realise how close they get, right? So are you able to just describe that a little bit to us, and when that happens, and what people should do when they're approaching that point?
Yeah. So the point you're talking about was well described in a book I read a long time ago called Crossing the Chasm. I don't know if you remember it, or I don't even know if that's the name of the book, but that was the part of the book that struck out to me. And you know, so many businesses start off and they get this sort of, you know, directional push where things are looking good, but then they get to a point where they've got to cross the chasm, because most businesses, 99% or whatever was fall into this chasm. They don't cross it and then keep going. And I could probably argue that I'm still not sure if I've crossed the chasm, you know, because it's now 9 years later from when I started that journey, and I'm still pushing every day. I'm still out there battling, and it's still you know, all hands on deck work. But I would say that for me, I've never given up. There's never been a day where I've given up. There's never been a time where I haven't felt that I'm on the right track. Now, let me just clarify what I mean by that is that sure, I've made mistakes. I've made plenty of them, and that's part of the world of being in business. But it's how I respond to those mistakes, and it's how you handle those, and it's a lot of it's about taking responsibility and moving on, as opposed to sitting and dwelling on it. You know, I've had partnerships and business partnerships with big corporations that you know that don't move at the same speed as my humble team of 9 staff here in New York work at, and that can be incredibly frustrating. But it's rewarding on the other hand because some of these companies have massive distribution. So there are frustrating moments along the way. I guess that to try and get to your point, you know, when the movie broke on Netflix in July of 2011, and you know you couldn't buy a juice extractor machine in the US, in Walmart, in Target, in retail stores. To get an understanding, the juice extractor market was about $150 million a year in sales. After my movie came out, it jumped to $273 million the next year. So we added about $120 million of value to a category because people saw the movie and said, right, I want to do what Joe did, and rushed out and bought a machine. That was incredibly rewarding after 2007 to 2012, 5 years of people thinking, what's Joe doing in an edit room in New York City? He's gone mad. Because no one knew what we had. No one saw anything. No one knew that what I knew, and I knew that I had something that was pretty exciting and pretty special to share with the world. So it's that ability to push through, to maintain the focus, and so that when it does come, when success does come, sometimes it's difficult to recognize. Sometimes you don't see it because you're too focused on what you're trying to do. And I would argue that probably I'm still like that a bit today.
It's interesting how you describe that story, Joe, and I'm not sure if Stuart's still here with us. I think his image has disappeared, but I'm sure he's listening in. In the meantime, I'll probably just jump in and say this. There's no doubt that you're a leader, you're a disruptor, you're a pioneer, you're an influencer, etc., etc., and I can relate to all of that myself as an entrepreneur. And as an entrepreneur, we do face challenges, we do face many obstacles. You've mentioned some of those obstacles and perhaps made a remark that, yes, it takes luck, passion involved. I just want to focus a little bit more on the challenge, or the challenges that you faced in getting to that point that you are now, because a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs find it constantly challenging just to get off the ground, and then maybe when you've reached the first level, then they start to lose the big picture because it starts to get too hard with resources or money or people, or the skeptics out there might start to push you back. So I guess my question is, what would you say is the number one, or what would be one of the greatest challenges you faced, doing what you did so far, and even now, what is still your greatest challenge?
The greatest challenge, I think, I would say probably still the greatest challenge is finding the right people to execute the plan. Staff and I've got good people, don't get me wrong, and if any of them are listening, they know I think the world of them. But that's where I am today. In the very beginning, when I was starting off, trying to attract the right talent pool, trying to get myself up to speed in a category that I really didn't know a lot about, learning social media, because really if you think about it, from 2007 to now, it really has been the age of social media and communities, and technology has played a huge role in that. And I came from a finance background, not a technology background, so getting my head around that. So these hurdles of finding the right talent, educating myself enough. I made a mistake early on in the piece where, had I known what I know now about how Facebook's platform has evolved, I would never have spent, $250,000 on software for in-house development that we started spending in 2009, for example, because I didn't know where the thing was going. I'm not saying I should have known, because not many people did, but that's an example of going down a rabbit hole or going down a place. So I think that their challenges. I'm trying to zero in on your point being, what's the greatest challenge I've had. I would say I'm in the business of helping people, okay? And when you help people, you're generally helping the people that need it the most, and they're generally at the bottom of the socio-economic table. And asking or trying to sell a product to that group, that sort of goes against my nature. So I think what's also been difficult for us has been trying to work out a money-generating business off something where you're providing hope and inspiration. And so the capitalism versus the generosity and the giving side come together. And so we rely on sponsorship from bigger corporations to get a message out. We rely on revenue from Apple TV and Netflix, and these days people don't want to pay to watch things. They want things for free. So it's not, the challenges are trying to work out what's the best way to extract a revenue stream out to keep the dream alive. That's probably the biggest challenge.
That's really good advice, Joe, and I'm sure the listeners are there, scribbling a lot of notes. And if I was an aspiring entrepreneur, I'd probably have at least 20 great points there to note. I'm conscious of time too, and perhaps I might give Stuart an opportunity to ask another question, and perhaps we'll be wrapping up in the next 5 or 10 minutes. So, Stuart, on to you, mate.
Thanks, Federico. Really appreciate the content coming out of you tonight, Joe. You're really coming up with some gold nugget stuff, and I'm sure our audience are enjoying this. We actually have got a question from one of our audience. It's probably a little bit off centre, but she raised the question. This is from Michelle. She's raised the question. With your running a full juice diet, particularly around fruit and vegetables, she says there would be a lot of sugar content in that, and how would you compensate for that high volume of sugar, given that there seems to be such an awareness of sugar these days in their diet?
Yeah, good question from Michelle. Thanks, Stuart. So I would say, rather than spending too much time on that detail, Michelle, I would say if you hit our website, rebootwithjoe.com, and take a look. We are huge fans of the 80-20 rule, which means 80% of the volume of our juice comes from vegetables and 20% comes from fruit. So, for example, if I'm going to make what I call, say, a mean green juice, which is cucumber, celery, ginger, lemon, kale, and an apple, I can make up with 2 apples and 2 big cucumbers, 5-6 stalks of celery, 6 or 7 handfuls of kale, and half a lemon. I can generally make, given that Michelle, I'm assuming, is in Australia, I'll do it in litres, I can generally get about 800 mils to a 1 litre of juice from that, and I've only used 2 apples. So I've got like two big glasses like this, and it's only the equivalent of having 1 apple, but I'm getting a cucumber, I'm having 2 celery sticks. So I'm getting an enormous amount of micronutrients from the vegetables. So yes, we have to be very careful of sugar content, but we are dealing with the plant world. And when I talk about sugar being cut down, I much prefer to talk about the processed side of the game and refined carbohydrates, and sort of cutting out that angle rather than the plant world. But it is a good point, and in all my books and in all of our content, we do dwell on that. Now, there are exceptions. If you're going to go for a workout, if you're going to do exercise in the morning, then it's perhaps not going to be need to stick to such strict rules. But if you're in a juice-only environment, then and you're doing what we call a reboot, then we like you to stick to that because you'll get a lot better results.
Awesome, awesome. So look, moving to, well, really from personal health to marketing health, can I ask you, Joe, what methods do you utilise to get yourself heard in amongst all the noise in today's digital world? I mean, there's Instagram, there's Facebook, LinkedIn, I mean, you name it. We're here right now on Google Hangouts. There's so much noise, right? How do you get the message out through all that?
Yeah, well, it's getting harder and harder, Stuart. You know, I would say that as an example, you know, what we have found is that our newsletter, our own email address collection over the years has proved to be far more valuable than, say, for example, our following on social media via Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I think there is a tremendous amount of noise there where people are, you know, this idea of 15 seconds, 45 seconds, 2 minutes, you know, I think this is getting harder and harder and harder to penetrate, which is why I sort of made a decision, you know, 6 years ago to go long form. So you'll find that I'm in the business of creating 90-minute documentaries, which is harder than doing a 2-minute and 5-minute video and more expensive. But I think that, you know, if I've got a platform like Netflix with 82 million subscribers worldwide, and my movie is on their platform and it's sitting there and I have 3 of them, you'd be surprised how many people watch one of my films, say, last night. It's probably 2,500, 3,000 people around the world gave me an hour and a half last night in front of their Samsung or Philips big TV in their living room. And when you're with someone for an hour and a half and you're sharing stories that connect, you then get some follow through of whether it's buying into the world of Reboot and signing up, whether it's going out and buying a machine through our website, whether it's taking on a health coach. So we have found that our strategy to date has been the long form film world, using Netflix, using Hulu, using Apple TV as our distribution platform. So trying to rise above all the noise of the short stuff to be more long and substantial and more meaningful. I'm not saying that's going to work, but that's what we've done today. In the future, believe it or not, we're going to be resorting back to TV. I think that television still plays a huge role, and from a category of where we are, the infomercial world, of buying a half hour of television to share a solution and to share a system and a way that you can, you know, in 30 days really change your life in a big way, more so than anything else I've ever seen in terms of 30 days. I mean, you give me anyone and I put them on a reboot for 30 days, and I will tell you now, you will struggle to see anyone who gets better results in a shorter period of time than by doing what we are talking about. And I didn't invent this. This is part of human nature. You know, we are supposed to go for periods of time without eating. I mean, this idea of having 3 meals a day, where'd that come from? You know, we're 5 million years old as a species, and up until 100 years ago, we were still having famines where we wouldn't eat for a few weeks or days at a time. These days, there's a feast on every corner. So all I'm doing, I haven't invented anything, I'm just enabling people to remember what they've forgotten. And so to try and help people remember what they've forgotten, using that power of television, when you get a half hour, once again, that's long form in my eyes, and I feel that, you know, I'm not so much the soundbite guy. What I'm talking about here are fundamental changes that need to take place in your life, and you can't do that in sound bites.
So I totally support your legacy of healthy eating. In fact, I've got my pineapple here ready for tonight. You haven't mentioned pineapple, but I thought you would.
One of my favourite juices, Federico: pineapple, watermelon, and ginger.
Well, that's great advice for the listeners. What I'd like to do is probably wrap up shortly and just say this, that you've offered us and viewers a lot of golden nuggets, as we call it in this show, and for those, I suppose, aspiring entrepreneurs that want to, pursue a goal like yours that certainly has been very ambitious if you look back 10 or so years. Some of the top tips you've offered, I've noted down, such as giving back. It is about a bit of social entrepreneurship, as it is also about making money. Starting a movement and obviously getting a community of people behind you to support you. Telling a story, being real, being passionate. Obviously, luck plays a part in that. Making mistakes, learning how to handle those mistakes, and most importantly, moving on from those mistakes. And one of the key recipes, I guess, in any form of success is finding the right type of people, and also learning to exploit and utilize social media, as you've stated towards the end of the point, the last point you've made. So, look, I'd like to say thank you, Joe, for your time. I know that you're a busy man and you've got a lot of other goals and pursuits even today. I'm honoured to have you on the show, and it's been an absolute blessing for me to have you tonight, or this morning. So thanks again, Joe. And before we do wrap up, I want to give Stuart an opportunity to perhaps make a quick mention of our forthcoming event and anything else he wishes to say.
Yeah, thanks, Federico. So we've got coming up next week, actually, Jacob Warwick with some considerable digital marketing expertise, and I think that's going to be particularly poignant for a lot of people, is understanding how to make digital marketing work. That's on August the 9th, and then we've got, following up that, Sam Moran. And Sam has come from the entertainment world, and he didn't do that quite so simply. So we're going to hear about his story and how he had a lot of fun and made a big success out of entertainment. And that's all coming up very soon on Inspiretalk. Thanks, Federico.
Very exciting, Stuart, and thanks again. And Joe, once again, thanks for your time. I wish you all the best. I'm sure you'll be doing amazingly well. And I do have one quick question. Are you planning to release number 3 of your series of documentaries?
So I always said if I'm going to do a Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead 3, it would have to involve science in a big way. And I'd really want it to be about the science of what's going on in the body, and I'd like it to be part of a study that we could get printed into the halls, the annals of medical literature. So it's a big project, and I haven't forgotten about it. I'm still sort of working in the background, but a project of that size is going to require a fair bit more success by us down the road. So it's something that I'm not saying it's not happening, Federico, but I'm saying at the moment it's still just a twinkle in my eye, but we'll have to sort of wait and see where it ends up.
Absolutely. Look, it sounds like work in progress, but it's certainly exciting, and I'll be tuning in once you make an announcement. So what we'll do now is wrap up and go off air in just a moment. So thanks again, Joe, and thanks to you, Stuart.
Thanks, guys. It's been great to be on the show. Appreciate it, and wish you guys luck with what you're doing here, spreading the word about inspiration and thought leadership. I think it's fabulous.
Fantastic, and thanks again. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.